What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Clarence Camo Podcast. I'm your host, the Clarence Camo Hunter. I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Sorry I haven't been around the last couple weeks. I've been traveling, and so I was getting ready for my trip, and then I went on this trip, which is actually what this episode's going to be about. But before we get into that, let's get a word from our sponsors. So, Tops Knives. Check them out at topsknives.com. Awesome knives. I'll tell you what, they are top quality. Check them out, topsknives.com. Check out their podcast, Tops Daily Grind. Occasionally they give knives away. So if you kind of want to test one without dropping the money, see if you can win one on their podcast. I won the El Pionero on their podcast, and it was by luck. It's not because they picked me or anything, so check that out for sure. They just gave away some of their new Steel Eagles. So, yeah, definitely check that out. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. Throughout this episode, you're going to notice that there's going to be some spots in here where I kind of talk about a specific product. I'll explain that when we get there. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So I was recently on a trip. We drove over 2,000 miles round trip. It was me and my two daughters, my dad, his girlfriend, and her granddaughter, all in one vehicle. And then my sister went with her husband and their son. And then we met up with my dad's girlfriend's son, his wife, and her daughter. So it was a pretty big group that we were going with. But to start off the trip, we drove from where we are in Idaho down to Winnemucca. It was a decent drive, not too much going on. We had called the Walmart down there to make sure we could sleep in their parking lot because some Walmarts allow it and some Walmarts don't. Their rule was as long as we were so far back, and we followed the general guidelines, quiet times at 10, 10 to 6 is quiet time. Things like that, being pretty standard, it was all right. And we didn't think it was going to be too big of a deal to sleep in the parking lot there, but that's because our local Walmart, maybe you'll have 2 or 3 campers there. But no, this one was a hopping place. There was one point in time where we counted over a dozen other campers in that parking lot. So kudos to that Walmart. They're hopping. So it was also really nice to have, a bathroom because we hauled a trailer down and it has a bathroom, but anyone who's ever used the bathroom in a trailer, it's small. And then you also have to dump all that later. So it was nice to not have to worry about that. Just use Walmart. That night, though, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we're all asleep, and it was a little bit chilly, so we had the heater going, had the window cracked, so because it's a propane heater, had the windows open so it wasn't going to suffocate us. There was some guys out there that were hooting and hollering about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if they were singing or howling at the moon, but damn, they must have had a little too much to drink because they were getting quite rowdy at 3 o'clock. But after I heard what was going on, I just went back to sleep. The next morning we were up and at 'em. We were up real early, got everything packed up again, ready to head out on the road. And from that day we were driving down to the RV park that we were going to stay at just outside of Yosemite National Park. And so we drove through, kept driving through Nevada, went through Carson City, stopped to have lunch. I can't remember the name of the pizza place, but we stopped at Maverick and there was a local pizza place there and it was really good pizza. So if you're ever in the Maverick in Carson City, check out that pizza. Really, really good pizza. I just got to say that. So from there, we headed into California. As soon as we got through California, we went by a lake, I believe it was called Topaz Lake. As we were coming into California, there's a little checkpoint we had to stop at. They're asking if we had any fruits, which I thought was a little odd. We had some apples, I think we had some oranges too, some bananas. They just let us right on through. Yeah, they didn't search us or anything. But as soon as we got through there, we were heading towards the road that we were trying to take because we were trying to avoid the major cities, at least the bigger cities. And we later found out that that was a problem, but we'll get into that. So we head down the road and head over the road that Google Maps was telling us to go over. Turn down to go down that road, and there's sign after sign telling us that long vehicles are not recommended, anything over 30 feet. There's a 24% grade, which is really, really steep. So maybe it was 26%. It was steep. It was something that we didn't really want to go over with this trailer because to give you an idea of what we're in, there's a 27-foot bumper pull toy hauler that we're hauling around with a Ford F-250 four-door long box. So it was not a small setup. Now my sister and her husband, they were in their rig, which was I believe it's a GMC Canyon. So it's a smaller pickup, and they're hauling a small little Airstream with them. So things are a little bit different for them, but they're also in a lighter vehicle, so there's other challenges that come with that. But so we turn around, decide not to go over that pass, and we decided to go over another pass called Monitor Pass. And as we're heading up, we're seeing vehicles coming down just covered in snow. So there must have been a snowstorm hitting at the top of that pass. We get almost to the top. There's nowhere to turn around, and people are waving their arms at us, telling us not to do it, not to go. It's not worth it. But it's not like we could have turned around. So we had to keep on trucking. So we get up over this pass, and there was snow at the top, and it was pretty rough. A little bit scary, but we made it over the pass. And just over the pass, there's a little spot to pull over. So my dad pulls over because he's driving. Pulls over, and we wait for my sister to pull up, and we couldn't find them. And so we waited there for a few minutes and trying to figure out where they were. There's no cell service where we're at, so it's not like we can call them and ask them how's it going. So I decided that I was going to walk back up the hill, and my dad was going to drive down the hill. And if he hadn't heard anything from me in an hour and a half, he was going to unhook his trailer and head back my way and see if he couldn't pick me up. So that was the plan. I start walking up the hill. I made it maybe 400 yards, and I got cell service. I got a text message from my sister saying that they had turned around. They didn't know if what we had gone over was the worst of the pass or if it was going to get any worse. They decided to be safe, and I'm not saying what they did was wrong. I want to get that out in the clear. They were making sure that they were safe, and so good for them on that. So they turned around. As I got the text saying that they turned around, I look down the hill. I can see my dad. He is stopped, and he's talking to California Highway Patrol. So I'm over there pointing to try and tell him to come back and pick me up, but he wasn't looking at me. So I just started to walk back down the hill. I figured I will meet him at the bottom, so this way we don't have to worry about anything. If I had met up with my sister, if she hadn't turned around, I was just going to catch a ride down with her. So anyway, I get walking down the hill, and right where my dad had dropped me off is the same point that I met this California Highway Patrol officer who was zooming up that hill. I gotta say, man, he was hauling it. And he jumped out of his car, and he was, it looked like, from my point of view, it looked like he was coming out to try and tell me to get on the ground, kind of a thing. I mean, it was quite aggressive the way that he got out of his vehicle. Literally flung the door open, both legs hit the ground. He hops out, and he goes, "Hey, is your dad the one down there in the white Ford?" "Yeah, that's my dad." He goes, "All right, cool, man." And at this point, I got my hands up in the air, like by my head. They're not like straight up, but they're by my head, just to kind of show that I'm not a threat. And so he's like, "All right, cool, man. You got any knives, guns, grenades?" And I had a knife on me. I knew I was going to California, so I didn't bring any guns. But I had my knife on me. And I was like, yeah, I got a knife right here on my hip. And I kept my hands up. He's like, all right, man, I'm going to come grab that. So he comes over and he's trying to pull it out of the sheath. Now, I had the Tops El Pionero on me is what I had. And Tops Knives makes their sheaths married to their knives. So it's not just a generic sheath that it slips into. They are compatible for each other. So he was trying to pull the knife out of the sheath and it wouldn't come out. So he ended up just taking the whole thing off of my belt. And he's, I'm going to hold on to this and you can get it back when we're done. And he goes, what's going on? And so I told him what's going on. I told him that my sister had turned around and that they're safe. And so he's like, all right, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go to your sister or do you want to go to your dad? And I was like, well, just take me over to my dad so I can inform him of what's going on. He's like, all right, cool. So he still has my knife. He puts it in his bag in the front seat, and he puts me in the back seat. So I got to ride in the back seat of a California Highway Patrol vehicle, which that was an experience because I'm not used to riding in the back of cop cars. So I got to sit there feeling like I was getting hauled off to jail. But he kept telling me I'm not in trouble. But as we're heading down the road, he goes, these passes out here, they're rough. All these passes go over 8,000 feet. And I was like, well, we're from Idaho. I mean, we go over passes all the time. And so, like, we kind of understand how to go over a pass. We just don't know how to get to where we're going. And so he's like, well, I'll explain that when we get down to your dad. He's like, this is the last good part of California. He was pretty conservative. So he's telling me this is the last good part of California. This is where the beauty still lasts. This is where the good people are. I guess he worked in Fresno on a car theft task force, and he was arresting people that have already been arrested on average 16 times already. So that's a career choice. That's not a mistake. But he was telling me that these passes can get quite treacherous, and that's why this is the good part of California, because this is where the conservatives live. They're the ones that can make it over the pass. The liberals get too scared. And I was like, well, funny enough that you mentioned that. Out of our entire group, the vehicle that turned around is the most liberal out of all of us. And he got a good chuckle out of that. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my sister. She's definitely a lot more liberal than I am. Basically, you can take what I am and turn it into a complete opposite, and that would be my sister. So, yeah, we're two very different people, which is probably why we made it over the pass and they didn't, according to the officer. But, yeah, so the liberals apparently can't handle those roads. But he takes me down to my dad, and he's like, okay, go grab a pen and paper, and I'm going to tell you how to get out of here and get to where you're going. So, grab a pen and paper, and he goes, okay, so you're going to go over to this town called Jackson. And he told us how to get there, what roads we needed to take. He goes, after you drive about 15 minutes, you're going to come to an intersection. At that intersection is where the rest of your family will meet you. And, okay, so we got a hold of my sister, told her where to go. And we met up at this intersection, drove down to Jackson. We got there about 9:30 at night. And these roads so far have been nothing but winds. I mean, back and forth, all switchbacks, even when it wasn't up the hill, I guess. So it was just windy roads. And he tells us to go to Jackson. We get there, find a spot that we could pull off. There's a Denny's. We haven't eaten anything since lunch at Carson City. So we stop off at Denny's, grab some food, figure out the plan. He told us that when we get to Jackson, just Google the best route to get to Yosemite. So we weren't actually staying in Yosemite. We were a little ways away. So we just Googled the best route to get to our camp spot, and followed those roads. Now, those roads took us through San Andreas, and it took us down this highway called the Golden Chain Highway. And I gotta say, if anyone that has any sort of power in California is listening to this, screw your highway. That highway sucks. It was awful. Just windy damn road. It's already dark, so we couldn't see anything. And there is a turn in there that was like, when I'm looking at the map, it literally looked like a circle because the blue line that they show you're driving on, it was such a tight turn, it touched. And so, yeah, some windy roads. Now, we knew that we were going to have to go over some steep passes because we have to go over the Sierras. but we didn't realize how steep we were getting into. So these roads sucked. Absolutely awful. We finally did get to our campsite at 2 o'clock in the morning. We got the trailer backed in, partially set up, basically just good enough for us to sleep for the night. And we passed out, just zonked out. Woke up pretty late the next day because we got in late. Got the trailer finished getting set up. Figured out what we were going to do. Decided we were going to head into the park and go see the sequoias. We were over there by, I believe it's called Moderna Grove. So drove in, saw the sequoias. My wife wanted me to get a picture with my girls by the sequoias, so I got a picture of the girls with the sequoias. They have one that's been chopped down by the visitor center, so you can see how big they are. So I got a picture of them with that. We couldn't get off the trail to go see the sequoias, but it started to rain, and it was raining pretty good. Now, we had just come from really nice weather, and it's been really nice weather, so we didn't bring our jackets, and so that was a bit of a mistake. But we got through everything, and there's a shuttle bus there, and the shuttle's like every 5 minutes over at Moderna Grove that takes you to from the visitor center to the Grove. And so we were getting hopeful about these shuttles in Yosemite. But yeah, we went up, saw the trees, turned around, waited our turn for the shuttle, got on the bus, done deal. It was getting late. Came back to the visitor center, and my sister said that there was a hotel up the road, so she wanted to go take a look at that. So we went up to this hotel. It's called the Wawona Hotel, and it's a pretty hotel, but there's a little visitor center there. And so we talked to them and asked them what were fun things to do for kids, because we have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old with us, and a 10-year-old. And so there was also a 12-year-old there. So, I mean, there was a bunch of kids. We were looking for fun things to do with them. The lady that was there basically was absolutely no help. She just kept telling us, don't speed in the park. You're going to get a speeding ticket, and if you hit a bear, you'll get a ticket for that. And she made it sound like if you hit a bear, it was like the end of the world. She said, they lose 10 to 15 bears a year. And she was just persistent that we don't speed in the park. And I mean, we weren't planning on speeding in the park. But she was not much help for figuring out what to do with kids. But she did tell us that there was another visitor center deeper into the park once you got into the valley at Yosemite Village. She tells us that there's a bunch of little buildings there. They have a little movie theater that plays a little video about the park. And there's a bunch of things for kids to do out there and some short hikes. So we thought that would be a good idea. So we went straight from there back to our camp and started making dinner. It was my night for dinner, so I had chose to do barbecue chicken and tinfoil potatoes. But we decided to not do the potatoes in tinfoil. We actually cooked them in the Dutch oven. And then I used the McMurry hand-forged Firebox Base Camp, which is the large one. I'm cooking dinner for 12 people, and we were using charcoal because they actually had a fire ban. There was no fires. They weren't even allowing charcoal, except they were making an exception because it was rainy. And so they were allowing us to use charcoal. We just had to leave it in the vessel that we were cooking it in. No charcoal on the ground. It had to be in a vessel, which it was. It was inside this firebox, which was really nice. Now, the firebox, though, it was really big, so it did take quite a bit of charcoal. And because the charcoal had gotten wet, it was difficult to get up to temperature and stay up to temperature. Wet charcoal just doesn't burn quite right. So we did have to use a little bit of the Camp Chef, which they did allow propane cook. You could use propane to cook. But we got a little bit of the chicken done there, a little bit on the Camp Chef there, and got that cooked up. I will say that if we had good charcoal, that firebox would have been awesome, or if we could have used a fire, actually built a fire in that box, it would have been way better than wet charcoal. It's actually built for fires in there. So keep that in mind. If you want to check those out, you can go to McMurryHandforged.com and see what he's building. It's called the Firebox Base Camp. He's got 3 sizes. There's a small, medium, and large. We were using the large because we were cooking for 12 people. But they're really nifty. But we got dinner all cooked up. It went over really well. Now, because it was barbecue chicken, I actually marinate my chicken breasts in barbecue sauce. And as you guys probably know, cooking with barbecue sauce can be a pain. When we cooked it on the Camp Chef, we were using a cast iron griddle. The cast iron griddle was quite difficult to scrub that barbecue sauce off of. It was much easier to scrub it off of the firebox. So there's a little plus side for you there. It has a little griddle on top. It was so much easier to cook it off of or clean it off of. You can actually see us cooking on that on my Instagram. Clearance camo _DOT_COM. So you can check those out there. Anyway, so we got dinner all finished up. And it was pretty much just time to hit the hay, go to bed. So we went to bed. The next day we got up. Now we were told, I guess I should mention this earlier, we were told by the lady who was threatening our lives if we hit the bear. She didn't really threaten our lives, but that if you're not in the park by 9 a.m., you're not going to get a parking spot. And she was, I think that's why she was trying to get at the speeding thing. But if you're not in the park by 9, you're not getting a spot. So the next day we got up a little late, and she was right. We got to the park at like 11, and there was absolutely no parking. We drove around for hours looking for a parking spot, and we're in this massive truck. And so it's not just like we can pick any little spot. We have to have a specific spot. And these people are parking where there is no parking spots, but their car fits. I mean, it's crazy to find parking in Yosemite. So we get through basically all of our patients. We're just done with it and decide that we're going to just head back. So we head back. We did find a little spot to stop. It was just a pull-off on the side of the road. Now, there's no shuttles that go to these little pull-offs, but there was some shade. So we ate lunch. We actually had the barbecue chicken we had sliced up and had that on sandwiches, and they were really, really good. And then we decided to just head back down the road. We went back down the road, and turns out we were just like maybe a mile down the road from El Capitan, which has picnic benches and it has a little bathroom in there. So we stopped there so we could use the restroom, continued down the road, and then there was Bridal Falls. Bridal Falls is absolutely beautiful. And so we found a little bit of a spot that we could pull off, walked back, took pictures with Bridal Falls, walked back to the truck, and we were out of there. Yeah, we were pretty upset that we couldn't find any parking whatsoever. So we got back to camp. My sister joined us later. She actually had my oldest daughter with her. They found a parking spot because they were in a smaller vehicle, so they got to do some fun things. They didn't go on any hikes, but they just got to see some things that we didn't get to see. But we met up with them, had dinner. We cooked burgers on the McMurry hand-forged firebox, and those turned out great. We used the same charcoal, and it was having an issue getting up to temp. We used a new bag of charcoal, and it worked like a dream once we put the new charcoal in and got it going. So I think that was the issue, was the charcoal got wet. So there's a little lesson for you. Don't use the wet charcoal, which I'm sure you already know, and I knew it too. We were just trying to get things done. But we cooked the burgers, got back with my sister, and we were talking about going back into the park the next day, leaving our camp at 7, so this way we knew that we were going to get a parking spot, but it was difficult to get everybody on board, so we actually borrowed my dad's truck, and we had my sister, her husband, and myself in the front seat, their son and my 2 girls in the back seat, and we were getting ready to load up. It was about 7:05 and getting ready to leave, and my daughter says that she's got to go to the bathroom. Her belly hurts. So we take her in, let her go to the bathroom. By the time that everything was all finished up and she was finally back in her seat, 7:30. So we're like, oh well, I guess we'll just see what we can get. Get to the park, and basically get checked in. Head straight through. Now there's a spot when you come in called Tunnel View. So you drive through this massive tunnel. It's about 4,000 feet long. And I could tell you all sorts of facts about this tunnel, but it's 4,000 feet long. Once you get through the tunnel, there's a spot that you can stop and park, and you can see everything in Yosemite Valley. So you can see Half Dome, you can see El Capitan, you can see Yosemite Falls. I believe you can even see Bridal Falls. You can see all sorts of stuff from this view. And I was going to stop there and get some pictures with my kids, but we decided that we're not going to risk it. We're going to just head down to Yosemite Village and get a parking spot. If we want to, on the way back, we'll stop, but I'm not risking a parking spot. So I head down to Yosemite Village, and there's parking all over. As a matter of fact, I was able to back into a spot and have a spot on both sides of me. And this was after giving up a different spot because it was in mud. So I had plenty of parking opportunities because we got there early. So we parked the truck, head over to this little information center, figure out what some fun things to do with the kids are. They recommended that we go for a hike through Yosemite Falls, and go up to the lower falls, which is about a mile hike, round trip. So that's what we decided to do. We head up there, go see Lower Yosemite Falls. The water is just gushing right now. There's a ton of water in the park, which actually caused the trail to be a little bit flooded. There was a few puddles we had to walk through. So we picked the kids up so they're not walking in wet shoes. I'm in Hey Dudes. My sister's in hiking boots, and her husband is the only smart one out of all of us apparently, and he's wearing sandals. So yeah, we finished this hike through wet shoes. We decided that we're going to go on the way back. We're going to avoid going the route we came and actually take a different route that goes over to a visitor center. And so I thought that was going to be perfect. Well, then my youngest daughter says she has to go potty, so I had to turn around, take her back to almost the base of the falls, which really wasn't that far. Let her go potty, and then we turned around and came back, but I told them to go ahead, and I didn't see which route they took. So because of that, I walked back the way we came. So I walked back through those puddles, but I actually missed a turn. And so I ended up walking through 3 puddles twice throughout this whole trip. And they weren't like little puddles. I mean, they were ankle deep or higher. So I was definitely walking with wet shoes and wet socks. But that's okay. So we made it back over to the visitor center. The visitor center is under construction. So when we got there, the only thing that was open was the gift shop. And yeah, that wasn't real interesting. They have a little store over there called the Village Store. They had some souvenirs in there. My dad called me and told me that if I find a bandana that has a map of the park on it, to buy it. So we looked around, we found one. It was like $26 for this bandana. So that was a no-go for that. I'm not buying a bandana for $26. So I called my dad and told him it was $26. He told me to forget about it. Yeah, so we kind of looked around there. Then the kids are all sorts of tired. That was a pretty good walk for all of them. So it was time to head back to the truck, let them take a nap. As we're getting back to the truck, I was stopped by a woman who was parked in front of the truck and asked if I was leaving. And I told her, well, it's going to be a minute. And she goes, it's fine, I'll wait. And I was like, well, it might be like 20, 30 minutes. And she goes, I'll wait. And so that, just to give you an idea how bad parking is there, people are willing to wait 30 minutes for you to leave your parking spot. There was a car in front of us that made it so we couldn't just pull right out. And it wasn't this lady, it was a different car. So my brother-in-law hopped out and helped guide me so I could get as close to that car as possible and then back up and then get pulled out of there. So we got out of there. She literally whipped in that spot, and I'm sure they were just stoked that they got a parking spot. Now there's shuttles that run all throughout Yosemite, and they go not all throughout Yosemite, but throughout the Yosemite Valley. And what we determined was that there's only 3 buses, and they're one right after the other. And if you don't catch one of those, then you have to wait an hour. My sister had seen some people literally fighting over who can catch the shuttle. And so we thought that it's probably not the best idea for us to take the shuttle if people are going to be getting in fights on who can take the bus. So we decided no shuttles. But we head out of there. My brother-in-law wanted to see El Capitan, so I took him into the El Capitan viewing area, and so he got to see that. That's about all he wanted to do was see it, because there's not much you can do for it, especially with little kids. So drove out of there, showed them Bridal Falls, and then from Bridal Falls, we just left the park. We were going to go over to that tunnel view, but by the time we got there, all 3 kids are out cold. I mean, they were wiped. So finished that off, and it was just time to head back to camp. When we got back to camp, we learned that the rest of the group had gone to some thrift stores. There's a magazine that they handed out at the RV park, and it actually had a map of thrift stores in the area. So while we were in the park, they went to thrift stores. They actually found a bandana that was $9, and they thought that was too expensive. So I'm sure they would have thought that over $20 would have been way too expensive for this bandana. But that's all right. So we kind of talked about our day and everything that we did. And then that night we basically got as packed up as we could and got everything back into the trailer. We slept, and then we wanted to be out of the park by 10 not out of the park, out of the RV park by 10 because we were actually going to Lake Tahoe the next day. So got everything as packed up as we could. The next day, we dumped the trailer because they had dumps at this spot. Got all packed up, and we were out of there just a little after 10, which was perfect. So we drove over to Lake Tahoe, and we were staying in this RV park. It's actually a state park. And so we got in there, and we decided that to get there, we weren't going to take any more of these windy damn roads. So we actually drove through Sacramento and on I-80 most of the way. And yeah, for being from a small town in Idaho to going to like Sacramento traffic, that's a little more stressful, but it's less stressful than going through these windy damn roads. So we thought that was the better idea. So we got to Lake Tahoe, pulled into camp. Now these campsites are supposed to be big enough for 2 vehicles, and they're not. They were big enough for our trailer. That was about it. And they're also not level. There was nothing level about this place. To get the trailer level, my dad has those wedges that you drive over and it lifts it up. Literally at its tallest point, we were still leaning. So it was pretty tough, but we just kind of sucked it up and dealt with it. Now there was no power, no water, no dump, and this park had still been winterized, so the dump there wasn't working. They had showers there, they weren't working. They had a bathroom there. There was no soap and no paper towels there. This park is apparently well known for black bears, and so they really warned us about leaving anything that has to do with food out. So you couldn't be in the cab of your vehicle, couldn't be in the back of your vehicle. You had either had to have it in your bear box or in your trailer, because apparently if the bears see it, they'll try and grab it, and they will look up and look in your windows to see if they can find some food. But we got dinner cooking. As we're cooking dinner, we noticed that my dad had a tire going flat. So we took the spare, swapped it out with the flat tire, got it loaded up, and we decided that we were going to go into town and get it fixed. And so we got it all off and everything, and then we packed up everything that had to do with food, made sure it was put away. My dad's girlfriend and her granddaughter were pretty nervous about the bears, and there were some bananas in the window of the trailer, and so they made us move the bananas. Those are like 8 feet off the ground. I don't think there's an 8-foot tall black bear out there, but yeah. So we also noticed there was a broken pin for the steps so to get into the trailer. So we decided we'd just head into town and the next day get the pins, get the tire fixed, and then we were going to go over to the Donner Museum the next day. So uh, head to bed, wake up the next day, head into town, and got the tire fixed. We went over to Truckee and got the tire fixed in Truckee. We went over to Truckee Tire and we got there just after 1 o'clock. And we had a real big breakfast and just kind of made it a relaxing day. But we went into Truckee Tire. They were closed from noon to 1, and we were just after 1 o'clock. So we're like, okay, it'll only be a couple minutes before they get back. But by the door, there's this line of people. And so I'm thinking, man, we're going to be here all day trying to get this tire fixed. But no, it turns out that most of those guys were employees. So the employees were super helpful. As soon as they opened up the door, they grabbed the tire, pulled it in, and we're like, all right, man, we're just going to head over to the Donner Museum. We'll be back. And he's like, don't even bother leaving. It'll be less than 10 minutes. And sure enough, we weren't even there for 15 minutes. And the tire was fixed and filled up and back in the back of the truck. And it was a free flat repair. So thank you, Truckee Tire, for saving the day. That was awesome of you. So from there, we went over to the hardware store, got the pins that we needed. And in order to take a shower, there was a faucet across the road from our RV. So we actually grabbed a 75-foot garden hose and hooked that up and hooked it up to the trailer so that we can get everyone showered. But from there, we went over to the Donner Museum. For those of you who don't know what the Donner Museum's about, there was the Donner Party that was trying to cross the Sierras. And in the process, they got snowed in. It was a hellacious winter, and they ran out of food, and so they ended up eating their horses, and then they had to revert to eating people. So it was a little bit of forced cannibalism for survival. And so, yeah, it's a pretty interesting museum to go to. After that, we went over to the gift shop because I get my kids a pin for a lanyard, like a lapel pin for everywhere that they're going. So I got them a pin, and we also found out they sell jerky, locally sourced jerky at the Donner Museum. I want you to think about that for a second. Yeah, so we didn't buy any jerky because we were worried that it might be people. But headed out of the visitor center there that has, or the museum, I guess. Head out of the museum, and they have a monument over there, and this monument is massive. And when you look at that monument, they actually say that the top of the monument is how tall the snow was that year. So if you ever find your way over to the Donner Museum and you look at that monument, that's how tall the snow was when they were going through. So I can understand why they ended up eating people. So after the museum, we went over to this Sugar Pine Point Mansion. That's not the actual name of it, but I can't remember the name. But it's right on Lake Tahoe. We got there too late for a tour of the mansion, but I was able to peek in the windows. It's a very beautiful house, and it's right on Lake Tahoe. So if you ever had the chance to look into that, strongly recommend you check out that museum. But then we got to the lake, which, like I said, you can literally see the mansion from the lake. You can see the lake from the mansion. But let everyone kind of run around on the beach. My kids really wanted to get their feet wet, and I didn't want them to because it's a 3 and a 6-year-old. And so trying to get them to get their shoes on and without getting sand in it and complain about the sand was going to be a nightmare. But I got talked into letting them put their feet in the water, so they got their shoes off. I helped them roll up their pants, and they went in the water, and it was really, really cold. So they ran back, and now they're telling me that they can't get their shoes on because their feet are wet. And I was like, well, I told you, but I mean, whatever. So I had them sit on a log. I brushed off their feet, and it only took 1 foot for me to realize that I can't brush off their feet and then let go to grab their shoe because their foot goes right back into the sand. So, yeah, it was a brush off their feet and put the shoe on real quick. Then we got loaded back up, went back to camp, the super unlevel camp. I do have to say, though, that this camp was gorgeous. I mean, they had sugar pines everywhere. It was a really, really pretty camp. I believe they even had sequoias kind of sprinkled in there. So was super gorgeous. And I would go back to that camp. I'd probably want to take a tent if I was going to go back, but I would go back to that camp. It was really pretty. But we got all settled back into camp, and we decided we are going to pack everything up as much as we could, because the next day we wanted to be out of there by 8 a.m. And so we got packed up and mostly ready to go. The next morning we were up at 6, getting things packed up and out of there. We were out of there just after 8 o'clock, and then it was time to drive home. So we went over 600 miles home, and for anyone who's ever driven 600 miles in a day, you know that you start to get sleepy. So we made it to Elko, and I swapped out my dad, and I started to drive, and it was good. It was a good time. I had a lot of fun. I think I'm done with Yosemite for a while, though. I marked a few things off my bucket list. I got to see Half Dome. I got to see El Capitan. I got to see the Sequoias. And there was no parking. So it's also in California, and I don't really care for California. Well, we won't get into that. But yeah, we started to drive home. I don't remember where there was a truck stop, or not a truck stop, a rest area. But this rest area, we stopped on the way down, and it wasn't too bad. But on the way back, it stunk so bad that my girls and myself all literally gagged as soon as you opened the door. I mean, it was awful. Probably the worst smelling rest area / porta potty / any sort of thing that I've ever smelt. And I used to literally work in a landfill. So this was awful. But we did get back. 13 hours of driving is what it took us to get home. And so it was all right, but we made it back just in time for us to get unloaded and get to bed, so I could wake up and enjoy Father's Day with my family, because I left my wife and my son here. My wife is very pregnant, and my son is only 1, so we left them behind. But we got back just in time for me to spend the day with them for Father's Day. For Father's Day, I actually got a smoker, a pellet smoker. I've been using charcoal or wood chunks for a smoker. I actually built one out of a drum, and I also have a charcoal grill that I'll use to smoke as well. So this is my first time using a pellet smoker all by myself. So I made 3 racks of ribs and invited some people over, and the ribs were a success. I also made some corn on the cob, and that was really, really good. So thank you, kids and wife, for the smoker for Father's Day. I really appreciate it. I loved it. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. If you want to go check out Yosemite, make sure you're in the park early. If you want to check out Lake Tahoe, it's very beautiful. If you're there, check out the Donner Museum. So there were some highlights of the trip. I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings with this story. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody's feelings, just trying to get out how our trip went. We didn't do any fishing because we didn't want to have to pay for the fishing licenses, but there are some good fish in Lake Tahoe. I watched like a 14-inch brown trout jump, and it wasn't just a porpoise. It full on jumped out of the water. If you go, make sure you pack bug spray. Lots and lots of bugs in Yosemite and Lake Tahoe. Lots of skeeters. So, also, don't pick up the pine cones. They get really cranky about that. I heard the park rangers yelling at some kids for picking up sticks. So don't pick up the pine cones. If you're into glamping more than camping, good luck with that. Maybe stay in a hotel. But it was really pretty. There's a lot of history there, both in Yosemite and for Lake Tahoe. So maybe do a little bit of reading when you go or before you go and check that out. But it was awesome. Thank you to McMurry Hand Forged for letting me use that firebox. I appreciate it so much. It was awesome to use, and I recommend, if you guys are looking for one of these fireboxes, or if you're looking for a flat packing grill, Check these out. The bottom stays cold, so we were even able to use it on a wood table. But they do flat pack, so they come apart, and you can actually use a bolt to hold it together. So check those out. He also has the Wayfaring Stranger, which I wasn't able to use up there, but it's a flat packing small stove, wood burning stove that you can put a pot on and cook something that way. So check out McMurry Hand Forged and see if you can find a product there you like. So thank you very much to McMurry Hand Forged for letting me use that. Anyway, thank you, Dad, for inviting me on the trip. It was an awesome trip. I had a lot of fun. My kids had a lot of fun. I don't know if I'll do that trip again, but I will go on another trip with you. So, anyway, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, aim slow and shoot fast.